They still argue about the exact time it began. Some insist the clock on the VCR said 11:45. Others swear it was 11:47 on the dot, because the late-night host had just made a joke about the weather and the way the lights in his studio caught dust like tiny constellations. Maybe it doesn't matter. When I listen back to the tape that survived, decades turned to dust around it, whole lives moved on or disappeared. The moment that always catches me is the silence right before the first sound. It's a silence that feels like a held breath, a hand just outside the frame, ready to switch everything off and on again. I didn't grow up there. The signal never reached my town. The first time I heard about the vanishing broadcast, I was sitting at a kitchen table thousands of kilometers away, too young to drink the coffee they offered me, pretending I understood the names they said, the dates, the cold way grief flattens a voice. By then, the story was a rumor that rattled along the rails of memory. A late-night interruption on a local station in Eastern Europe. A symbol on a black screen. A voice saying not to look outside. And a small number, too many, and yet somehow not enough, of viewers who never answered their front doors the next morning. I didn't believe it then. Or maybe I did. Belief is a door you can talk yourself through without realizing you've crossed the threshold. All I know is that years later, long after the station changed ownership and the town's factory windows were boarded shut, I met a woman who kept a box beneath her bed. Inside were receipts that had once been important, 4 buttons from a coat her mother wore in winter, a dried sprig of something that used to smell like summers near the river, and a VHS tape with a label so faded the ink looked like fog. "Play it," she said. "Tell me what you hear." Her name is Mira. In every version of this story, there is someone like her, a person tethered to a night the world insists on forgetting. She was 22 in 1987, living on the top floor of a building that quivered when trucks passed, sharing a television with a roommate who worked the morning shift at the bakery and slept like a stone. "I didn't sleep much," she told me. "I would watch anything at that hour. It felt like listening to the town breathe." The tape whirred. The first minute was normal. The talk show host with a nervous laugh, the studio lights, the desk, the way his hand tapped twice against his notes. Then cuts a smear of static, then nothing. I don't mean a fade out. I mean an absence that seems to drop your stomach down a flight of stairs. For 12 seconds, I counted, there was a black screen and something low and mechanical. The sound a refrigerator makes when you open the door in the dark. On tape, silence is never silence. It's a floor that complains under your feet. Then the symbol appeared. A triangle, clean and white, like a road sign stripped of its meaning. In its center, an eye that was only an eye because it resembled one. It could have been a seed, a fish, a narrow almond staring up. There are symbols that need history to frighten you, to drag their meanings behind them like chains. This wasn't one of them. This asked nothing of you except to be looked at. I think that might have been the point. The voice came a second later, as if woken from a dream it didn't want. "Do not look outside." It was male, or made to sound that way. It carried an echo that didn't belong to the room they recorded it in. It sounded like the air inside of a swimming pool, like words spoken underwater. People say distorted, the way they say haunted. Like that's a category you can check off. The voice wasn't distorted. It was obedient. Each syllable sat perfectly in place, as if it had been told where to live and learned to enjoy the smallness of its home. "I thought it was a joke," Mira said. "I thought, you know how people do things. Pranks." I turned up the volume on the tape. The voice repeats the phrase 3 times. Between each, the hiss of the broadcast grows softer, as if someone were stepping away from a microphone, as if the voice had to climb a hill to say it again. "Do not look outside." Mira's television sat across from a window that looked over the street. It wasn't much of a street. A grocery, a tailor who did more talking than sewing, a pole that had once held a parade banner and now leaned like an old man who couldn't decide where to walk. She was alone. She stood and moved closer to the screen. "Do not look outside." When she tells me this now, she laughs. Not because it's funny, because that's what the body needs to do to keep standing upright under something heavy. Of course I looked, she says. What else can you tell a person if you want them to listen? It's the part of the story I revisit the most. The tape gives you images. It gives you the voice. It cannot give you the sound a window makes when it decides it no longer separates you from the night. It cannot give you the taste of air that feels like an old basement. It cannot give you the knowledge that your town is not empty, that somewhere within the blackness beyond the glass there are shoes and the suggestion of a coat, and that the mouth is not where you thought it would be. Mira says she didn't scream. I believe her, not because screaming isn't what you do in a story like this, but because she's had so many years to adjust to the shape of that moment that a scream would feel like an apology. She turned the television volume down to a whisper. She watched the symbol. She watched the triangle's edges shimmer in the faint ways all screens used to breathe. The figure outside did not knock. That would come later to other people, whose doors vibrated like drums. The tape stutters there. For a single frame, maybe two, a face glides across the black, thinned by speed, as if taped over 100 times and losing inches with each pass. I froze the frame. I forced it to stand still in my laptop's grainy square, counted pixels like counting prayer beads, and then let it move again. I would be lying if I said I knew what it wanted me to notice. Sometimes the point is only that you were watching and then you were watched. People like to turn the next part into numbers. It feels safer, like getting your facts in a row will hold your hand as you cross the street. 14 people missing. A few more who didn't answer their phones until morning and said, when they finally did, that the night felt too tall. Of the missing, most lived alone. One was a boy of 11 who loved drawing airplanes. One was a woman who sewed sleeves for the patchwork of uniforms the factory demanded. One was a man who sold stamps and would sit behind glass, calling each by their face's true name. The police wrote reports. Faded carbon copies still sit in drawers that only open when you pull them wrong. I've held one up to the light. No signs of forced entry, it says. Television powered and tuned to the local broadcast channel. Kitchen utensils dry. Window latched from inside one officer, now gone. Told a younger man who told a friend who told me. In one apartment, the bed was made, but not by hands that knew the trick. The top sheet was a little off. It made him sigh with a tenderness he could not explain. A station engineer named Pavel kept a diary. It's a tiny book, its spine a zigzag of hurt. I found it in a drawer full of loose screws, and the coins people use to hold down photographs they don't want the wind to move. He wrote about signal strength, about a vacuum tube replaced on Tuesday, about the feeling of the building itself, the way you can tell if a place is tired. On April 12th, he wrote, "Interruption, not ours. Tone test does not match. I." Then, after that, a line that looks like he started a word and remembered the world. Pavel disliked superstition. He tells me this twice when we meet in a cafe that used to be a place where men measured each other by their ability to leave cigarettes alone. He buys tea. He doesn't drink it. He says, there was no technical reason. He says, we record everything, even accidents. He says, the tape we would have had is not the tape you saw. It's as if there are two histories, one for us, one for whatever came in, how did it get on air? He looks at the window while he thinks, as if the answer lives out there and he must be sure not to look it in the eye. There's a switch, he says, which is the kind of answer that feels like an answer and isn't. Everything moves through a switch, but when we opened the cabinet, there was nothing to switch. The feed was from us. It wasn't. There's a word for something that is and isn't. I don't know it. Later, I play the tape for him, and he nods like a man not at church who has nevertheless been carried into prayer. He points to a hum only he hears. He tells me it's not 50 hertz. He tells me the eye in the triangle is not in perfect center. It's too human, he says. Machines do center better. The voice repeats the message 12 times, and then the triangle fades to black without moving. It's as if color is poured into a shape and then poured back out in a thin stream. There's a 2-second delay. Like a breath, the tape needs to collect itself. And then the regular broadcast returns, as if it had never moved an inch. The host has his hand on his notes. His smile is back, too precise, and it's only in the corner of the frame that you see his glass of water shiver. He looks past the camera. For a second, the reflected studio light in his eye finds another angle. He changes topics. He speaks about a concert that weekend. He laughs, and the laugh belongs to a man who had once been told, firmly, not to turn around. A child named Daniel left behind a drawing. It ended up in a school box of things no one had the heart to throw away. The first time I saw it, I assumed the triangle was a mountain, the eye above it, a sun. But that's what we do with children's art. We drag our own world over theirs until we can nod and say, of course. When you look longer, you see the windows of an apartment building stacked like teeth. You see how the sun's rays are not rays at all, but 12 lines radiating out, each cut short by a careful hand. You see in the lower left corner a shape that might be a cat, except for the number of legs. A note on the back in a teacher's tidy script says, "After television." Mira watched the night until it sagged and gave itself to the thinness of morning. When she slept, it was only because your body will sometimes forgive you your mind. She woke to knocking from across the hall, men's voices, the flat vowels of authority. The woman in 3B had not come to work. Her door was locked. When they opened it with the spare kept in the lobby, the television was a bright square of snow. She was a good neighbor, Mira says. She complained about the smell of garlic as if it were a personal failing. She loaned me a scarf once. It smelled of her, which was better than the smell of my life then. We walked to the building together. Years have passed. Someone painted over old cracks and then painted again. In the stairwell, you can still hear the pigeons in the eaves. She points to the window where she had stood that night, careful to lead my eyes without letting them land where hers did once. We go up. We go down. The hallway's light is a kind of apology. I ask her if she remembers the last ordinary thought she had before the triangle. She smiles, really smiles, the kind that puts little brackets around a memory, and says, yes. I wondered why the host wore such a small watch. It looked like it was biting his wrist. Then the smile fades. Not because the next thought hurts, but because there isn't one. I think that was the last ordinary thing, she says. I think after that everything tried to behave and failed. People said the broadcast caused a panic. I don't believe that. Panic is loud, public, a wave of bodies remembering that they are animals. The people who vanished did not run into the street. They didn't break their ankles on stairs. They didn't flood the switchboard or set their curtains alight. There is a special kind of terror that asks nothing of you. It doesn't require a scream, or a sprint, or even a breath held so long your chest aches. It just asks that you stand still, and listen, and believe. It asks that you obey a sentence. Do not look outside. A man whose wife disappeared told me he unplugged the television during the interruption and still heard the voice. Another, who lived on the ground floor, said he opened his door out of spite. He said the hallway was there, the same way hallways are always there, and yet he could not step into it. Like when the swimming pool is full of water, he said, and everything is blue and wobbly, and you know you can jump, but the jump sticks to the heat above it. He walked back and sat on his couch. He folded his hands over his knees. He counted to 100. He woke at dawn and found his neighbor's door ajar, and the neighbor gone, and the neighbor's tea cold enough to grow a skin. There's a theory that the symbol mattered less than where you were when you saw it. That the broadcast selected not by desire or worth, but by configuration. The angle of a chair to a window, the way a lamp threw light into a corner that had never cared for it, the half-open mouth of a vase, the number of breaths you took before you could find the remote. A child's toy turned away from the television, like a good child. These are details that don't fill any report, that don't make it into the room where officials clear their throats and insist the world is made of regular weather. But when I lay awake and let the tape play inside my head, it's not the symbol I see. It's the shape of a room that does not want you to stay. I found the station's basement on a day that tasted like rust. There was a flood once and then another, and the stairs were marked with silt lines like years carved into trees. In an old rack case, its labels unpeeling, I found a single reel-to-reel tape marked with the date. I brought it upstairs, bribed a technician with a story about lost music, and listened to something that could have been a heartbeat if the heart were made of wires. Underneath it, if you pressed your ear into the hum and forgot your name, you could hear a faint whisper. It didn't say not to look outside. It said, "You are outside." It said it once, and then the tape clicked as if embarrassed for having tried. I can't prove that the broadcast caused those disappearances. I can't prove it didn't. Proof is a luxury in a place that only gives you echoes and politely asks you to be grateful. What I can tell you is that when the station went back to normal, nothing was normal. People took their televisions out to the curb like unlucky dogs. The baker sold more bread than he ever had, as if eating could stuff the night back into its closet. Someone painted over the symbol on a wall where it had appeared overnight, but the paint cracked in the shape of an eye when winter came. Sometimes the world leaves a seam where you can see the stitching. Sometimes you press on it, and it holds. Sometimes your thumb slips through and you feel the insides and you pull back, because it's not polite to touch the parts of the world that make it work. The broadcast was a seam. The town pressed. It didn't hold. When I tell this story to people far away, they ask why the tape is so clean if it lived in a box under a bed. They ask why the triangle is so precise if the station was a tired old beast propped up by people who needed it to purr to get through their days. They ask why anyone would obey a command from a screen. They ask why the missing locked their doors. They ask why the missing didn't scream. Questions like that draw a map to the wrong place. The right place is quiet and hums at the edge of hearing. The right place is the 12 seconds of black. The right place is the fraction of a face. I took the tape to a man who restores old things for a living. Not televisions or tapes, violins. He held it as if it could sing. He inspected the edges as if he could hear them. "You know, this is not what you think it is," he said gently, as if coaxing a cat out from under a bed. "Whatever it is, someone wanted it to be found. Things that want to be gone are gone. They don't leave instructions." "What instructions?" I asked. He smiled and pointed to the leader, the blank strip at the start. In the right light, you could see the faintest impression, as if someone had written with a pen that was out of ink. A little triangle, an eye that could have been a seed. "It's not for us," he said. "It's for itself. Mira doesn't watch late-night television anymore. She reads. She walks. She tends to a plant that refuses to die even when it pretends to for months. When I brought the tape back to her, she didn't put it away. She left it on the table and made us tea. There are nights," she said, "when I wake and the room is the wrong shape. It looks the same. It isn't. I wait. It fixes itself. Or I fix myself to it. I don't know. Maybe it's a conversation." "Do you wish you hadn't looked?" I asked. She looked at me as if I had asked whether she wished the sun would rise on someone else's house. "There are wishes that are too big," she said. "They put holes in the walls. When I play the tape now, alone, I keep my curtains closed. I turn the volume so low I have to lean in. The triangle arrives like a decision. The voice sounds almost kind. Do not look outside. It isn't a threat. It's advice, like telling someone not to stir a pot the wrong way or not to stand where the door swings. I pause it and stand in the kitchen and pour water into a glass and listen to the house argue with itself about the temperature. Then I return, press play, and let the sentence finish its round. After the 12th repetition, after the triangle fades, after the host resumes the world, after the glass on his desk stills, there is one more second of tape most people never notice. It's nothing. A breath that belongs to nobody. A whisper turned inside out. I used to think it was the machine thanking itself for working. Lately, I think it's the night saying, "We can try that again." Maybe the missing learned something. Maybe they were called and answered and found that someone had left the door open for them in a place the rest of us cannot make our feet find. Maybe they walked into a room that has always waited on the other side of every window, every screen, every mirror leaned too casually against a wall. Or maybe they're here, just turned sideways, like those trick portraits in old houses that only look back when you stand in the exact wrong place. You'll ask what I recommend. You'll ask what a person should do if the screen goes dark for 12 seconds and an eye finds you, and the voice becomes the room. I can tell you what I tell myself when the night leans too close. Count your breaths. List the names of your neighbors. Walk your eyes from one familiar object to another. If you must look at the reflection of the window in the glass screen, and not the window itself. And if you hear a knock that is not a knock so much as a suggestion, if you hear your name spoken from outside in a version of your mother's voice, remind yourself that kindness and imitation are not the same. There are nights when the city stills and apartments light up, one window at a time, as if passing a secret along. There are nights when the pigeons on the eaves of Mira's building tuck their heads in and dream of warmer air. There are nights when the station's new owners forget to lock a door and the backup generator is left to hum in a language older than electricity. On those nights when sleep drops me beside the old seam and I feel the pull to slip a thumb under it, I think of a boy drawing a triangle with 12 careful lines around it. I think of a woman who kept a tape in a box so that it could keep her too. I think of a man who wrote "I" in a book smaller than his palm and decided that was enough. In the end, stories like this are instructions we give our past. They say, "Stay where I can see you." They say, "Do not wander." They say, "Look at me when I speak." But the past is not a child. It does not obey. It sits in its chair and stares at a window and listens to a voice born of wires and weather and something that moved between them. It learns the lesson the night taught once and may teach again, that some doors don't need to be opened or closed to be doors. If you ask me what I believe, I won't give you an answer you can hold up to the light. Belief was never the point. The point is the 12 seconds, the black that breathes, the triangle that arrives, the sentence that wants you to be good. The point is the rooms we build to keep ourselves safe and the spaces between the boards where the air leaks. The point is that when the tape clicks and the host smiles and the laugh rewinds the world, you will feel, for a second, that something has politely stepped aside to let your life continue. And if you happen to be standing by the window, if your fingers pinch the edge of the curtain, if the glass has cooled from the night, you will know exactly what not to do. Do not look outside. Not because the outside is bad, not because the night is hungry, because there are moments when the world offers you an instruction it learned from a place you cannot visit. Because obedience is a door, and defiance is another. And between them, there is a hallway that doesn't always lead where you expect. Because once, on a spring night that shook a small town loose from its own shape, a voice came into living rooms and bedrooms and kitchens and told the truth. And the truth was simple. And the truth was a test. And the truth remains. Do not look outside. And if you do, if curiosity pulls the curtain back, if boredom or bravado or a bead of water on the glass tips you forward, if you do, and the dark has learned your outline, and the air returns your name with a smile too wide to trust, and a sound begins in the bones of the building, and a triangle you will later insist was only a trick of the light tilts its eye toward you. If you do, then I hope you remember the other truth the tape cannot speak, the one that lives between the hum and the hush. There are ways back. Not for everyone, not always, but there are ways. A tea left to cool, a scarf smelling like someone else's winter, a bed made slightly wrong, a drawing of a sun that isn't, a laugh you don't recognize in your own throat, a door that refuses to open until the hallway remembers you fit there. These are stitches. You can follow them. You can keep your hands to your sides. You can teach yourself to unhear the suggestion of your name. You can stand in the room until the room reconsiders and takes you in again. and you can praise your ordinary thoughts for saving your life. The size of a watch, the price of bread, the way a pigeon's foot drags on metal. And if you can't, if you don't, if the tape ends and the morning opens its mouth and you are not there to answer it, then maybe it's because you were called to a place with softer floors and a sky that forgets to be heavy. Maybe the seam opened because it was tired of being a line and dreamed of being a door. Maybe you belong in a hall where windows are only ideas and every triangle is a mountain and every eye is a seed. Maybe that's the mercy we don't recognize, that some instructions are not warnings but invitations mispronounced. I rewind the tape. I press play. The symbol arrives. The voice speaks. Somewhere, the past arranges itself into a chair and sits. Somewhere else, a window is simply a window, and beyond it there is nothing but the outside, which is only a name for everything that isn't you. The host taps his notes, smiles, and says the weather will be warmer by the weekend. In the reflection of his glass, if you are cruel to yourself and pause at the wrong moment, you will think you see an eye. You will tell yourself it's the light. You will be right. You will be spared.